I want to pose a question to you right now, and I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't rush to respond. The reason being, this is something most people lack the courage to even ask themselves. Have you ever considered this? When someone genuinely cares about you, why do they sometimes create distance? Why do they pull away just when things seem to be getting closer? Why do they fall silent? Yet they never completely disappear. Here's what most people believe. A person who loves you will come to you. Someone who wants you will speak up. The brave one will take that step forward. But reality doesn't operate this way, especially when emotions become involved. According to Jung, a person becomes most vulnerable toward what they value most, and being vulnerable poses a threat to the ego. This explains why certain individuals move more slowly the deeper their feelings run. They become quieter, they hesitate more, they hold themselves back. Now pause and consider this. That person on your mind, aren't they sometimes very attentive toward you, and at other times distant? Sometimes they look into your eyes but remain wordless. Sometimes they seem like they want to reach out, but they don't. Sometimes they place you right at the center of their world. At other times, they take a step backward. This isn't indecision. This is absolutely not a game. This is internal conflict. Jung suggests that when a person cannot handle an emotion they carry unconsciously, their behavior becomes contradictory. In other words, the heart moves in one direction. The mind hits the brakes. Because the mind poses questions. What if this emotion transforms me? What if this connection leads me somewhere irreversible? What if I lose control? And right here is where a person puts up their defenses. They create space, they go quiet, they buy themselves time. But never forget this. Distance doesn't always signify lack of interest. Sometimes distance means being unable to bear the weight of emotion. If you recognize this weight, write distance in the comments. If someone felt nothing toward you, they wouldn't experience so much back and forth. They wouldn't spend so much time thinking about it. They wouldn't battle with themselves internally to this degree. A person who truly feels nothing is clear, cold, straightforward. But the person you're thinking about isn't like that. Their behavior isn't clear, because their emotion is clear, but their courage isn't. Now I'm going to share something small but extremely important with you, and I want you to keep this in mind. By the end of this video, you'll understand very clearly what this distance is actually preparing for and where this process is heading. But first, we need to accept something. Certain emotions aren't experienced immediately. First, they frighten a person, then they test them. Then they're either suppressed or they emerge with full force. And this is exactly where we are right now. Now let's go a bit deeper, because at this point, most people get it wrong. Someone keeping their distance from you doesn't always mean they want to move away. Sometimes it's precisely the opposite. Sometimes this happens because they feel they've gotten too close to you. Think about it. When a person senses a connection that will genuinely touch their life, what do? Do they openly put everything out there, or do they first pull back? According to Jung, when a person encounters an emotion they haven't identified within themselves yet, they instinctively pause. Because the unknown threatens the mind, and this threat often isn't logical, but it feels real. Do you know what this person feels when they think about you? Loss of control, disruption of balance, shaking of the order they've grown accustomed to. This is why they sometimes go quiet, sometimes take a backward step. Sometimes they keep you right on the edge of their life, but can't completely remove you either. This isn't a game of indecision. This is an internal struggle. There are two voices in their mind. One says, get closer to them. The other says, stop. And usually, the second voice wins. Because the second voice is safe. It doesn't take risks. It doesn't leave the heart exposed. But let me say this very clearly. A person cannot silence their heart. They can only delay it. Jung states that suppressed emotion doesn't vanish. It gets pushed into the unconscious. And everything pushed into the unconscious seeps into behavior somehow. This is why this person's behavior toward you is inconsistent. One day distant, one day warm, one day seemingly absent, one day extremely aware. If they truly didn't care, there wouldn't be this much contradiction. There wouldn't be this much internal exhaustion. There wouldn't be this much self-conflict. Look, a person doesn't run if they're not afraid of losing something. But if there's a possibility of loss, that's when they pause, they think, they wait. So keeping distance from you sometimes communicates this. If I get closer to you, this won't just be one step. If I acknowledge this emotion, there will be no turning back. And right here is where the ego steps in. The ego doesn't like change. The ego fears uncertainty. But the heart eventually weighs heavier over time. Now I want you to know this. This distance isn't an ending. This is a way station. And at this way station, a person either completely suppresses their emotion or gathers their courage and approaches the truth. There's no middle ground between these two. Now let's go one step further, because here there's a very critical detail that most people don't notice. When a person truly forms an attachment to someone, the first thing they experience isn't happiness. The first thing that arrives is fear, because attachment means releasing control. This person who has feelings related to you isn't actually running from you, but from themselves, from the new version forming within themselves, from the possibility of their own identity changing. According to Jung, when a person is confronted with an emotion that will transform them, they first show resistance, because transformation means the death of the old self, and the ego doesn't love death. That's why this person sometimes looks at you but averts their gaze. Sometimes they want to speak but swallow their words. Sometimes they approach you, then create a meaningless distance. These behaviors aren't unplanned. This is an unconscious defense. Ask yourself this. If they felt nothing, would they be this careful? Would they hold themselves back this much? Would they think this much? A person doesn't circle around something they don't care about this intensely. They don't stay up nights over a connection they don't value. They don't construct scenarios in their mind. But the truly interesting part begins here. This person doesn't just want you. They're matching you with an incomplete part within themselves. Jung says a person most often falls in love, not with the person across from them, but with their own uncompleted aspect. And this is difficult to recognize. You are a possibility for this person, a possibility of another life, a possibility of another self. This is why this connection isn't light. This is why it isn't easy. When this person thinks about you, they're not just thinking about you. They're also thinking about how their life will change if they get closer to you, how the order they're used to will be disrupted, how their zone of control will narrow. And here distance comes into play again. Distance isn't where emotion ends. Distance is where emotion is being attempted to be digested. According to Jung, every suppressed emotion finds another way out for itself. That's why this person can't forget you. They can't completely remove you from their life. Perhaps they turn toward others. Perhaps they keep themselves busy. Perhaps they try to appear strong. But when they're alone, the mind returns, because the unconscious reminds them of what's being avoided. Let me say this very clearly. This person isn't indecisive. This person is in conflict. Their heart and mind aren't in the same place. And until these two sides reconcile, this back and forth continues. This is why some connections are silent, but deep. They don't make noise, but they leave marks. They don't progress quickly, but they're powerful. And such connections either get completely suppressed, or one day, jumping over all the fears, they get acknowledged. They don't stay in the middle. Now let's go a bit deeper, because at this point, most people are standing in the wrong place. What someone feels toward you doesn't always manifest through clear behaviors. Sometimes the opposite happens. The stronger the feeling, the more complexity there is. The more this person wants to approach you, the more another part within them activates, and this part says something. If I acknowledge this emotion, I'll lose control. According to Jung, a person's greatest fear isn't rejection. The greatest fear is becoming someone they won't be able to recognize themselves as. If you understand this fear, write confront in the comments, because a new emotion means a new identity. This is why this person is sometimes very interested in you, while at other times completely withdraws into themselves. This isn't a game. This is an internal conflict. Consider this. If this person saw you as someone ordinary, would they think this much? Would they hesitate this much? Would they try to control their own behavior this much? A person doesn't expend this much energy on an insignificant connection. This person magnifies everything related to you. A small glance, a brief conversation, a simple message. Because in their mind, you're no longer just one person. You're a possibility. You're a turning point. Jung says a person sometimes wants not the person across from them, but the change they represent, yet simultaneously fears this change. This is why distance enters between you. Distance isn't the absence of emotion. Distance is the weight of emotion. When this person thinks about you, they're not just thinking about you. They're questioning their own life, their own choices, their own courage. What will happen if they come to you? If they express this emotion, will there be a way back? What if they don't find reciprocation? As these questions spin in their mind, the body pulls back, words get swallowed, steps slow down. But nothing suppressed disappears, it just becomes silent. This is why this person can't completely ignore you, can't completely break away, can't completely forget. Perhaps they secretly follow things related to you. Perhaps they listen about you through others' words. Perhaps when you're in the environment, they become more careful. These aren't coincidences. The unconscious leaves traces of suppressed emotion. Age differences, past connections, or current situations. All of these are just excuses. The real issue is this. This connection has the potential to change something in this person's life. And when a person approaches something that will change their life, they first freeze, then flee, then return again. According to Jung, real connection disrupts a person's order. And when order is disrupted, the ego goes on the defensive. So this person's distance isn't an ending. This is a threshold. They'll either completely suppress this emotion, or at some point, despite all their fears, take a step toward it. There's no middle ground. Now we're arriving at the most critical point, because at this point, most people misinterpret the situation. From the moment this person thinks they've lost you, actually nothing ended. On the contrary, a new period began in their mind. According to Jung, when a person truly feels they've lost something, the unconscious activates and brings suppressed emotions to the surface, one by one. This is why this person isn't as comfortable as before. Things that used to be natural when you were around now become difficult. Even laughing, even focusing, even talking with someone else. Because you're no longer just a person in their mind. You're a void, and the mind cannot handle a void. This person might be trying to appear strong during the day. They might be telling themselves it's over, but when night comes, the defenses drop. The ego gets tired, and everything suppressed emerges. Jung says when a person is alone, the masks fall, and that's when real emotions speak. When no one is watching, this person is thinking about you. They're replaying certain moments over and over in their head. There are sentences they wish they'd said. There are places where they wish they'd behaved differently. If you feel this regret, write "I wish" in the comments. This regret isn't lived out loud, it's lived silently. Because regret clashes with a person's pride, and pride doesn't want to admit defeat. This is why this person doesn't come to you immediately, but can't completely distance themselves either. Because there's a conflict within them. One side says it's too late now. The other side says maybe there's still a chance. A person caught between these two voices appears indecisive from the outside, appears cold, appears distant. But inside, there's a storm. This person might be trying to escape from things that remind them of you. But no matter how much they run, they get stuck somewhere. In a song, on a street, in a word. Because real connection doesn't get erased from memory. It only gets suppressed. According to Jung, suppressed emotion doesn't disappear. It changes behavior. It changes mood. It changes a person's energy. This is why this person can't be like they used to be anymore. There's a void in their life, and the name of this void is you. But let me say this very clearly. Before this regret transforms into courage to win you back, it lives inside for a while longer. Because a person struggles to admit they've lost what they valued most. During this process, even if you do nothing, this connection continues to work within itself. The mind doesn't stop, the heart doesn't stop, and at some point this internal pressure either gets completely suppressed or spills outward despite all fears. This breaking point changes everything. Now it's time to see the complete picture, because at this point, you need to realize this. Since this person thought they lost you, internally, they're not the same person. According to Jung, when a person loses someone they've truly formed an attachment with, they don't just lose that person, they also lose a part of themselves. And this is why this pain isn't ordinary pain. This is a shock that disrupts the person's internal order. This person might appear strong from the outside. They might act like they're continuing with their life, but in their inner world, something constantly reminds them of you, and this reminder doesn't weaken as time passes. On the contrary, it deepens. Because regret grows over time, especially if emotions weren't lived honestly. This person is saying to themselves repeatedly what they couldn't say to you. Sometimes they're talking with you in their mind. Sometimes they're imagining you across from them. Sometimes they're getting lost in sentences that begin with, "I wish." And there's a very clear statement. Unexpressed emotion becomes fate, meaning everything unspoken wants to be lived at some point. This is why this person feels internal pressure. Their heart and mind aren't standing in the same place. One side still wants to maintain control. The other side can no longer carry this burden. Right at this point, something important happens. This person isn't just missing you, they're feeling responsibility toward you. Because true regret isn't just about losing, it's about realizing you did something wrong. And this awareness either completely shuts a person down or moves them to action despite all their fears. If this person truly didn't care about you, they wouldn't experience this much internal conflict. There wouldn't be this much silence. There wouldn't be this much suppression. Real connection disturbs a person because it forces a person to change, and you should know this. During this process, your energy isn't being affected for nothing either. Sometimes when they come to mind without you thinking about them, it's not coincidence. Sometimes when you feel a tightness in your heart, it's not coincidence. According to Jung, when there's an incomplete connection between two people, this connection affects both sides, and this is why this story isn't closed yet. If your story continues, write "continues" in the comments.